The Eagles are coming off a crazy victory against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rival New Orleans Saints, while the Buccaneers are coming off a shocking loss as Denver Broncos absolutely stomped them in the Week 3 matchup. So they're going to get some redemption here against the Eagles as they will host Jalen Hurts and company this Sunday for the Week 4 matchup. Ryan and I, we're going to break down the Eagles-Bucs game, the matchups within the game that you need to watch, and at the very end of the video, provide our predictions on who we think is going to win. But before we get into that, we're trying to get 100 new subscribers for these Week 4 prediction series videos. So any help is greatly appreciated. So if you have not already, go ahead, subscribe to the Tracy Take, leave a like and a comment. Let us know who you think is going to win this game and why. So Ryan, we were just talking about this. So let's start with the Eagles here. And we're talking about it off camera, I mean. But Eagles barely won this game. And it shouldn't have even been a contest. They were their biggest, worst enemy. The defense played phenomenal. They only held these explosive Saints offense that everybody's been talking about after they went into Dallas and shorted them. Only held them to 219 total yards, 130 passing yards as well. But if we go look at the series of events, and kind of my question is going to be around Nick Sirianni. I'd say on some of these decision-making, Jalen Hurts did play poorly, but they had a 3-and-out to start, yes, but an interception in the red zone, then a fumble in New Orleans territory, the turnover on downs to end the first half. When you're sitting there, just take the 3 points, you're only down 3. I don't even know what you were thinking. Then another turnover on downs when you're in New Orleans territory, trying to get 3 points on the board. That would have been a longer field goal, to be fair. Block punt. Then they finally got their touchdown with that crazy Saquon Barkley run. Then they missed a field goal, and then they had the touchdown on their second to last drive, or their main last drive. I'm not counting the kneeling. With the Dallas Goedert insane 60-yard run that set them up for the Saquon Barkley touchdown. And then through all that, the Saints offense was essentially held to nothing. The defense, Eagles defense played absolutely great.
And you didn't even, in my opinion, you didn't even touch on the worst decision that they made. Your defense had been holding the Saints offense to nothing. And then after skipping on the first 2 field goal attempts, they go for a 60-yard attempt that would put the Saints right at midfield when you're up by 1.
Yeah, that was a missed field goal, yeah. The Saints went down and scored, yeah.
And so then I believe you burn a timeout, miss the field goal, and then give the Saints the ball at midfield down 1 point. And somehow they still won. Like, that to me is the craziest thing, is they still won the game.
Well, it was like last week, as a Falcons fan, as you can obviously tell, we stole that game from y'all. I mean, we had no business winning that game at all. You guys almost handed one away. That's really kind of what it was like. And on the flip side, though, at least they're going to be rewarded against a Bucs team who shockingly struggled against, I think, what many people would arguably say maybe one of the worst teams in the league. No offense to Broncos fans, but I think any objectional fan would agree with that. Where they just got blown out for 4 quarters. And I didn't think too much of it in week 2 for this Buccaneers team, just because it was going against the Lions, who have a good defense. They were held to just a couple hundred yards in that game, kind of a slow offensive day. And yet it was kind of the same thing for this Bucs team as well. They were held to 223 yards, only 132 passing yards. Their Bucs had never really been a great rushing team, so 91 rushing yards wasn't too shocking to me. But they were completely dominated for most of the game. It seemed like a lot of 3-and-outs, or maybe 4 or 5 plays, but that's pretty much it. So the Eagles are going to be playing this Buccaneers team. It seems like at the right time, as the Bucs are still maybe trying to figure some stuff out.
Yeah, and that's like looking at the stats right now. Chris Godwin had 9 targets. Cade Otton had 8, and then I think Mike Evans only had 3 targets. He had 2 catches for 17 yards. So maybe Pat Surtain just was putting the clamps on him this week, and that was a tough matchup for them to really try to push the ball down the field, which kind of stalled their offense. But this is you said at the beginning of the video, the Denver Broncos are one of the worst teams in the NFL, and the Buccaneers should have put up a ton of points. The Seahawks had a subpar offensive performance in week 1 against the Broncos and still put up 26 points. I would think Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield would be able to do a similar type of thing with a bad offensive day. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how these two teams bounce back. The big injury notes, I think, are going to be Devontae Smith. Then is A.J. Brown going to be back for this game as well? Devontae Smith had a very scary concussion in the fourth quarter of that Saints game. And so we'll just kind of have to see how if he's able to come back. I don't believe he has a history of concussions, but with those type of injuries, you always want to err on the side of caution for players.
Especially with how big that hit was. And so let's kind of transition over to the week 4 matchup between the Eagles and the Bucs. But before we get into that, if you do want to put a couple bucks down on this game or any other week 4 game, go ahead and check the link down below. BetUS has a bunch of great promotions going on right now for first-time players. And I think kind of too, thinking about this game, the odds-wise, it's both these teams are going to be 2-1, but it definitely feels like a different momentum shift overall. I think to kind of which team is playing better right now. Eagles really should be 3-0. Once again, thank you as a Falcons fan. And so then they were lucky to get away with to leave with the win, especially with some of the decision making that they were playing. But in general, though, I think that they were just playing really good football. They've been playing really good football. They just seem to shoot themselves in the foot with turnovers or with questionable coaching decisions, like over aggression by Nick Sirianni. And and Jalen Hurts as well. He has had some interceptions or some throws that should have been interceptions just because they were trying to fit it into a window, I will say. So I think they're going to be the biggest X factors overall. It's just going to be, can they just mentally kind of not shoot themselves in the foot, like not have any of those mental lapses when it comes to decision making for certain play calling or just in the moment throws, for example. On the flip side, I think for the Bucs, they need to figure out just how to get some consistent offensive production. And so they had 392 total offensive yards against Washington. That's not really saying much, to be completely honest. 216 against Detroit on total offensive yards. I kind of get that. Detroit's got a good defense, but they were still able to pull out a victory. But 223 against Denver and only 132 passing yards. The Eagles defense, I thought, looked phenomenal today against the Saints. And so maybe the Saints had a bad game. Yes, they really shut down Rashid Shaheed and the deep ball. Really started to shut down. Alvin Kamara got his licks, absolutely. But in general, though, they kept that Saints offense in check. And I think Jalen Carter had an amazing game. It's going to be interesting to see how he does against this Tampa Bay offensive line. And then on the flip side as well, how's the Buccaneers defense going to do trying to stop Saquon Barkley in this Philadelphia rushing attack?
Yeah, and that was also a big thing. I felt the Broncos ran the ball fairly well against the Bucs. They averaged 4.9 yards per carry for 136 yards. And so the loss of Vita Vea in the middle is the first thing that kind of comes to mind, is they don't have that big run stuffer in the middle. Is he able to go against the Eagles there? So that'll be one big thing to watch. I mentioned the receivers earlier. If they're able to come back, I think that's a big bonus for the Eagles. But then also, I do think this might have just been a scenario where this was a little bit of a trap game for the Buccaneers. Like, they came off a big win against Detroit. This is supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league. It is still a professional football organization, and they came out, hit the Buccaneers in the mouth, and didn't really look back from there. And so I think this is going to be a really good matchup of two teams that are hopefully looking to fix some of the mistakes that they've made early on in the season moving forward. Not as we approach the middle of the season, but teams are, like, September is an extension of the preseason. This is kind of the last week where I feel like some of the bonehead errors are kind of still going to be able to be explained away as it's early season. They're still figuring things out. So let's get into predictions here. Tyler, who do you have coming out ahead in this matchup?
So depending on receiver status, and I still might go with them just because also Jahan Dotson was a great trade. I kind of questioned the trade a little bit by both parties, but now it makes the Eagles look really good that you have Jahan Dotson back there. But I am going to go with the Eagles. I think they're just going to have a little bit more explosive firepower, even with Saquon Barkley in the backfield. Even if they're out without A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, there is still I think a level to this Philadelphia rushing attack, which just opens everything up. And shoot, Dallas Goedert even as well too. Like we just kind of forget about him just because he doesn't get too many targets, but he had a whale of a game today. I think 10 catches, 170 yards. I think let me pull it up here. Yeah, 10 catches, 170 yards, borderline touchdown. Like I'll give him a touchdown asterisk just because it set up Saquon Barkley. But and then I say that because then on the flip side, then too, if you go look at the Tampa Bay defensive stats, they're not really good defensively at all during this time right now. 27th overall in total yards allowed, 25th in passing, 25th in rushing, and only a couple sacks on the season, 2 actually to be exact. So I think even kind of with some of the injuries that the Eagles are going through, I feel like Buccaneers overall are going through something a little bit bigger right now, trying to put points on the board. It's going to be a fun matchup between Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and then this Eagles secondary. I will say to keep that caveat.
Yeah, I'm also going with Philadelphia. Without Vita Vea, even if he does play, I'm curious what his usage will be. But without Vita Vea, I do struggle to see Tampa Bay really being able to stop this Philadelphia running attack, which is one of the best in the league. And I just that's going to be an issue. Jalen Hurts as well is a bit of a weapon, even though he has made more mistakes this year than he has in years past. So I just am leaning towards Philadelphia. I think also not that missing those 2 wide receivers is a good thing. That's not what I'm trying to say. I do think it would put Nick Sirianni in a position where he would probably have to play more field position and maybe take a more tactical look at things rather than it's 4th and 1. We really would love a touchdown here. Instead of putting guaranteed 3 points on the board, let's go for it. He might just take those 3 points and then put the Bucs and then kick the ball back to the Bucs and put the game in his defense's hands. So that to me, I think is an interesting aspect of this game is, does Nick Sirianni reflect on some of the mistakes he made? Because it really should not have been a close game against the Saints last week. And then what do the Bucs do to maybe combat some of the complacency or whatever it was against Denver that made them perform that way? So I think it's easier to fix Nick Sirianni's problems.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and wrap this one up here. We are both taking the Eagles in this Week 4 matchup. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on who you think is going to come out ahead in this matchup. Will it be the Philadelphia Eagles? Will it be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? And on that, we'll see you guys next time.